Welcome to the Resilience Podcast, where we embark together on this journey of transforming childhood trauma into growth and resilience. I'm Amandine Mas, a survivor of an ignored traumatic childhood. I spent 30 years in traumatic amnesia, which began to lift in 2020, reliving acute post-traumatic stress disorders. But this also means that there is a new life after trauma. This is why I became a trauma-informed coach, specializing in releasing buried childhood emotions to guide you on this beautiful adventure towards inner freedom, no matter your past. I'll see you right now for a new episode of Resilience. Hello. So after sharing the context in which my traumatic amnesia emerged, in this second episode, I'll talk about the little known way in which we truly uncover our childhood traumas. In other words, I'll discuss today the reactivation of our traumatic memories, supported by scientific data. It is for me crucial to address this phase of traumatic memory reactivation, which lies dormant and can awaken at any moment. Why is this so important? Because it's often when we give up our healing and lose hope in our resilience, because we resist. We resist what we feel, and we find ourselves even more isolated in our shame and guilt. So why is that? Because when traumatic amnesia begins to lift, traumatic memories which were buried resurface more frequently, more intrusively, as fragmented and uncontrolled memories because they are not integrated yet into the brain. So they show up as emotional flashbacks, nightmare, anxiety, or panic attacks. And they make us relive the violence we experienced identically with the same sensations and emotions as when we were children. And in this case, our first conditioned human reflex is to resist, to control everything, and to keep it all inside us, as if nothing had ever happened, as if by the greatest of mysteries, we had invented everything. Resisting, controlling, keeping everything inside. That's what I did from May to December 2020. Trust me, I did everything in my power to resist as best I could this new emotion that I didn't understand every single time my new partner talked about his 8-year-old daughter. This child reminded me of my childhood, which I had forgotten for 35 years when I entered traumatic amnesia. Each time he was mentioning his daughter, it was as if the light suddenly shined on the darkness of my childhood. It was as if the light came back on in this hotel room when I was assaulted at the age of 5. It was as if the light came back on right at the very moment when my heart and my body shut down, when my innocence ended in the greatest silence. And when the light suddenly came back on 35 years later, I was unable to talk about it and unable to accept this little girl and to open my heart to her, which amplified, as you can understand, my shame and my guilt of not being a woman like the others. I then entered a very rapid downward spiral. It was like unreal. I was haunted by my childhood, which settled into my life like a ghost, and I had no words for it. And when I painfully managed to articulate something, it didn't sound credible enough to get support from my close ones who didn't react. And the incomprehension of those around me further accentuated my shame. My shame at having been traumatized, assaulted in the past. And then destructive thoughts started playing on a loop in my head, like, it's not possible to feel this 35 years later. I must be mistaken. It doesn't make any sense. Why didn't I talk about it sooner if it was true? Now I know it's true and possible to feel these emotions 35 years later, because childhood trauma can remain trapped in the traumatic memory for a lifetime if we don't listen to it. It's like an endlessly crying child inside. So what is a traumatic memory? Honestly, it's an extraordinary survival mechanism that traps our memory in time and space, triggering when we face situations that remind us of our trauma. It really was like a ghost from the past haunting my adult life. This ghost was invisible and everywhere at once. This ghost didn't exist to anyone and yet still made many decisions for me. And when the ghost was here, meaning as soon as my partner talked about his daughter, I was immediately plunged into my past, which apparently hasn't passed. I felt powerless, inadequate, and inappropriate for months. And because I was ashamed to tell Shamez, my partner, that I relieved my trauma's emotions every time he talked about his daughter, I retreated into my favorite social mask. The strong woman, the warrior, the party girl, you name it. But behind the mask, my fears consumed me. I was willing to accept a lot to build this relationship and stay in Thailand, but I was not yet ready to face my increasingly agitated inner demons. I wanted this relationship at all costs, even if my inner world collapsed and my nervous system gave up. I wanted, but my body said no. Despite my resistance, my capacity to resist, my internal resources were already depleted. And then a triggering event made me surrender. It was at the end of 2020. Shamez and I finally committed to a serious relationship. We are still together, for the record. But at that time, we took our first trip to the Thai islands. And the trip in the island for me was the pinnacle of romance at that time. And he finally asked me the inevitable questions that was, Amandine, when are you available to meet my daughter? Freeze frame. That was like something inside me stops. This innocent question catapults me out of my clouds. My body tenses up until it hurts. But of course, I find a way to hide my distress. I wouldn't reveal my highest vulnerability for anything in the world. So my first response to him is very diplomatic. Yes, of course, Shamez, I totally understand. But inside, I am in total panic. All the indicators of my dashboard, my nervous system, are red. I am overwhelmed by intense anxiety and shame for not being like those women who accept another's child without problems. I feel like I'm fainting, dying, drifting away. My traumatic memory is activated. This is shock. Shock is an automatic survival reflex that turns me into a statue in a split second. My body disconnects from my mind. I am unable to speak, move, think, defend myself, scream, or flee. It's like an explosion in my brain, a bomb going off in my entire body. I don't yet know that I'm reliving the shock I felt when I was sexually assaulted at age 5. I don't yet know that this state of shock and other PTSD symptoms will multiply over the next 4 years because I'm gonna resist a lot out of shame, pretending nothing happened. I don't yet know that I will experience flashbacks and panic attack, which are the emotions my brain couldn't handle as a child each time my partner will mention his daughter. I don't yet understand this unsettling sensation of being split between two parts of myself that don't know each other, between Amandine, the 36-year-old woman, confident in this relationship she's building, seeing no problem in meeting this little girl, and Amandine, the 5-year-old child, traumatized, suffering in silence and reactivating repressed fear of dying. Maybe you know this sensation. I'm hijacked by a part of me that suddenly emerges from my past. Honestly, until that day Shamez suggested I meet his daughter, I had at that time a very well-oiled strategy when I entered into emotional overwhelm. At that time, I only needed to take a good shower, to go out with friends, and to drink larger quantities of alcohol to regain control over my turbulent inner world. But from that day, this strategy no longer works. From that day, my strong woman armor, which allowed me to survive, no longer protects me from my childhood emotional suffering. And no matter how much I press the be strong and shut up button, it no longer responds. It's as if someone took away the shield that protects me from my past fears. The party is over. My nervous system gives out in a few weeks. I start crying in public. I can no longer sleep or eat properly. I go out less and less. I'm ashamed of myself. I start having panic attacks in my bed. I even vomit after conversations about his happy daughter. For weeks, I'm shaken by intense feeling of insecurity, abandonment, jealousy, fear, and numbness throughout my body. Out of shame, I continue to remain silent. But The verdict is clear. I must meet his daughter soon. Crushed by the pain of these past emotions returning like a boomerang, I collapse, alone, miserable in my vast apartment. The lifting of traumatic amnesia has begun. I can no longer pretend. I need help to escape my emotional torture. So I finally reached out to therapy and coaching professionals I met in Bangkok. And with the help of my new coach and therapist, I managed to meet my lover's daughter under decent conditions, at least in appearance, even though I suffered 2 panic attacks before and after my dinner with her. But the point here is that this meeting with this girl points me to the exit from my psychological coma, reopening my unhealed wound from the past that I need to take care of now. After this meeting with her, my body tenses up and my brain panics every time my partner mentions even just the name of his daughter. And this detail makes my guilt and shame skyrocket for months. I am unable to ask about this child, much less meet her again, for fear of showing her my state of overwhelm and panic. I then enter an advanced avoidance strategy because it's my best way at that time to calm the anxiety raging within me. The simple fact that this child exists in my partner's life makes me regress into my own unhealed childhood. And this weakens me daily because I know that people around me don't understand and don't believe me, thinking I am crazy or selfish. I know it's true, but I don't know how to put words on it. I believe in myself from the beginning, even if I have no idea what to do with it yet. Nevertheless, this avoidance strategy will allow me to heal. My body can't accept at that time that this child exists. It's not ready to remember that what it had experienced at that little girl's age. Yes. It's as if my body commands me not to meet this little girl for now. Yes, it's an appropriate reaction in society. Yes, but it prevented my brain from breaking down again. Avoidance allowed me to reduce my panic attacks and to take care in priority of this petrified little girl still alive inside me. This is what is called a survival strategy. This is a very good example of what a survival strategy is. And according to PTSD specialists, intense fears and stress from traumatic experiences actually can cause heart attacks due to adrenaline and cortisol surges in the brain if we don't find a way to dissociate from the pain, even temporarily. This is why we create multiple strategies throughout our lives to divert ourselves from overwhelming emotions. And these survival mechanisms, they soothe us in the short term, yes, but don't heal the wound of our trauma injuries in the long term. These survival mechanisms keep us, as their name says, in survival mode. They're like temporary crutches. But at some point, if the survival mechanism has been used for too long, the elastic becomes too stretched, snaps back, and hits us in the face until we consciously set up, with the help of trusted people, an emotional resilience process to recreate a state of safety, of inner balance, by cultivating new skills and new emotions of safety, confidence, self-esteem. This is what I will share with you in the next episode of this podcast, and it's precisely what I would love to hear. I would have loved to hear when I was inside my traumatic amnesia. But my message for you today is very simple, is this one. It's crucial to seek help from trusted people, whether friends, family members, or professionals. It doesn't matter. You choose who you want to confide in to free yourself and relearn how to live differently after the trauma. Please don't wait 4 years like I did. It's essential to reclaim your power to choose what is good for you. Since trauma is the consequence of a lack of choice, one of its antidotes is to relearn how to choose the people as well as the activities, habits, and virtuous practices that support your resilience. The most important is to find your best way to listen to that child who cries inside you, to welcome and console them until they stop crying, without ever telling them to shut up again, as we often do, out of loyalty to our emotionally constipated and traumatized society. This is what we will do together in the next episode. Lifting Trauma Phase 3, Transforming Suffering into Meaning, how you can welcome, soothe, and integrate your past consciously to open a new chapter in your life, your post-trauma life, which holds so many beautiful surprises for you. In the meantime, I'm available for any questions under this episode and on my social medias. I invite you to, if you wish, to share your testimony and reactions following this episode, to help our community of resilient souls reconnect to their truth. And I also invite you, if you're ready, to book your free consultation with me to see how trauma-informed coaching can help you find your best solutions, which are already here inside you. With all my heart, wishing you the best for your new life after trauma. I see you soon.